On my 65th birthday, my daughter told me I'd never have to work again. 2 months later, I realized she wasn't giving me peace. She was taking my freedom. My name is Evelyn Grant, and for 43 years, I stood in front of classrooms teaching children how to read, how to write, how to think for themselves. I taught them about trust, about honesty, about the importance of keeping your word. I never imagined that one day I'd need to teach those same lessons to my own daughter, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from that morning when everything still felt safe, when I still believed that family meant protection instead of predator. I used to teach children how to read. Now I sit alone reading my electricity bills like riddles, trying to decode numbers that don't make sense anymore, trying to understand how a woman who spent 4 decades helping others learn to see clearly could be so blind to what was happening in her own home. The house is quiet now. It's always quiet. The morning light streams through the kitchen window, hitting the empty table where my husband used to sit with his coffee and newspaper. Henry's been gone 3 years now, and sometimes I still set out 2 cups before I remember. The silence echoes differently when you're alone. It's not peaceful, it's hollow. It rattles around inside your chest like loose change in an empty pocket. I look at the framed photos on the mantel. Pictures of birthdays, graduations, family dinners. There's Melissa at 8 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a crayon drawing that said, "World's Best Mom," in purple letters. There she is at 16, rolling her eyes at the camera, but unable to hide her smile. And there's her wedding photo, where she whispered in my ear, "Thank you for teaching me what love looks like." Funny how pictures can lie just as much as people can. The phone rings, breaking through my memories. It's Melissa, and I can hear the smile in her voice, even through the receiver. "Happy birthday, Mom. I'm coming over with a surprise." At 65, I'd stopped expecting surprises. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn that most surprises aren't the good kind. But this was my daughter, my only child, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep and helped with homework and walked down the aisle. If anyone was going to surprise me with something wonderful, it would be her. She arrives with flowers, white roses, my favorite, and a smile that lights up the whole room. Melissa has always been beautiful, but there's something different about her today. She seems excited, almost giddy, like she's holding onto a secret that's too big for her body. "I've been thinking, Mom," she says, settling into the chair across from me, the same chair where she used to sit as a child while I helped her with her reading. "You've worked so hard your whole life. You deserve to rest now, to enjoy your retirement without worrying about bills and bank accounts and all that stress." I nod, not sure where this is leading but grateful for her concern. It's true that managing everything alone has been overwhelming since Henry died. The insurance paperwork, the Medicare forms, the endless bills that seem to multiply like weeds in my mailbox. "So, I had an idea," Melissa continues, her eyes bright with what I mistake for love. "What if we set up a joint account? That way, I can help manage your finances, make sure all your bills are paid on time, handle the complicated stuff. You've done enough, Mom. Let me take care of you for once." The words hit me like sunshine after rain. For 3 years, I've been carrying the weight of everything alone. The house, the bills, the decisions about health insurance and Medicare, and which prescriptions I can afford and which ones I'll have to skip this month. The idea of sharing that burden, of having someone I trust help shoulder the load, feels like a gift I didn't know I needed. "That's so thoughtful of you, sweetheart," I tell her, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I've been struggling to keep track of everything since Dad died. It would be such a relief to have help. She beams at me, and for a moment, she looks just like that 8-year-old with the crayon drawing. Great. I already talked to the bank and we can set it up this week. I'll just need you to sign a few papers, and then you won't have to worry about any of it anymore. Won't have to worry. Those words echo in my head like a promise, like a prayer answered. I signed the papers without reading them carefully. Why would I? This is my daughter, the child I raised to be honest and kind. The child I taught to always tell the truth. God, how stupid could I be? The first sign something was wrong came 3 weeks later when I tried to buy groceries. I handed the cashier my debit card, the same card I'd used for years, and waited for the familiar beep of approval. Instead, the machine flashed red. Declined. Could you try running it again? I asked, embarrassment creeping up my neck like a rash. Behind me, other customers shifted impatiently, and I could feel their eyes on my back. The cashier, a young woman with kind eyes and purple hair, tried again. Declined. Maybe the machine's acting up, she said softly, but we both knew that wasn't it. Do you have another card? I fumbled through my purse for my credit card, my hands shaking slightly. When did my hands start shaking like this? When did I become this fragile old woman who can't even buy a week's worth of groceries without humiliation? The credit card went through, but barely. I could see the concern in the cashier's eyes as she handed me my receipt. $37.43 for basic necessities: milk, bread, eggs, the generic brand of everything because that's what my fixed income allows. $37 that I couldn't afford because somehow my bank account was empty. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with possible explanations. Maybe there was a mistake at the bank. Maybe someone had stolen my card number. Maybe there was a hold on my account for some bureaucratic reason that would be easily resolved with a phone call. Maybe my daughter hadn't just offered to help. Maybe she'd taken control. But no, I told myself, not Melissa, not my baby girl who used to climb into my lap when she had nightmares, who called me every week just to chat, who brought me flowers on my birthday and told me I deserved to rest. There had to be another explanation. The electricity bill arrived the next day, past due. The water bill came on Thursday, also past due. By Friday, I had a stack of red notices sitting on my kitchen table like accusations, each one demanding payment for services I thought were being automatically handled through my joint account with Melissa. I called her that evening, my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. Sweetheart, I think there might be a problem with our joint account, I said when she finally answered after 3 rings. My card was declined at the store, and I'm getting past due notices on all my bills. There was a pause, just long enough to make my stomach clench. Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry, Melissa said, and she sounded genuinely concerned. There must be some kind of mix-up. I've been so busy with work that I might have forgotten to transfer money from your savings. Let me look into it and get back to you, okay? Of course, honey. These things happen. But even as I said the words, something cold was settling in my bones. In 43 years of teaching, I developed a sixth sense for when children were lying to me. The tone was always just a little too careful, the words just a little too rehearsed. A week passed, then 2. Every time I called Melissa, it went straight to voicemail. Every time I left a message, it took her longer to call back. And when she did call, there was always an excuse. She was busy at work. There were complications at the bank. She was waiting for some paperwork to go through. Meanwhile, the bills kept coming. The pharmacy called to say my prescription was ready, but my insurance had lapsed due to non-payment. The electric company sent a final notice. My landline was scheduled to be disconnected. I started keeping track of everything in my old teacher's grade book, the red leather one Henry gave me on my first day of teaching. I wrote down every phone call, every excuse, every promise Melissa made and broke. Call it a truth log. Call it evidence. Call it the desperate record keeping of a woman who's starting to realize she's been played for a fool. October 15th. Called Melissa about overdue electric bill. She said she would take care of it immediately. October 18th. Electric company called with disconnect notice. Bill still unpaid. October 20th. Called Melissa again. Phone went to voicemail. October 22nd. Melissa called back. Said there was a temporary hold on the account that would be resolved any day now. Any day now. Those three words became a torture device, a carrot dangling just out of reach while I watched my life fall apart one unpaid bill at a time. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in early November. I walked to the bank. My car had been repossessed the week before when I couldn't make the payment, and asked to speak with someone about my account. The teller, a middle-aged woman with sympathetic eyes, pulled up my information and frowned at her computer screen. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "I'm showing that you're listed as a dependent on this account, not an owner." Dependent. The word hit me like a physical blow. In 43 years of working, in 65 years of living, I had never been anyone's dependent. Even after Henry died, even when the grief was so heavy I could barely get out of bed, I had been independent. I had been strong. "What does that mean exactly?" I asked, though I was already starting to understand. "It means you don't have access to withdraw funds or make changes to the account. Only the primary account holder can do that." The primary account holder, my daughter, my baby girl who I raised to be honest and trustworthy and kind. "Could you tell me who that is?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Melissa Grant Patterson is listed as the primary account holder. You're listed as her dependent." Dependent. There was that word again, each letter a tiny knife cutting into what was left of my dignity. "And could you tell me the current balance?" My voice was barely above a whisper. The teller's face softened with pity. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can only share that information with the primary account holder." I walked home in the November cold, my thin coat no match for the wind that cut through me like the truth I was finally ready to face. My daughter hadn't helped me manage my finances. She had stolen them. She hadn't offered to take care of me. She had made me her dependent, her burden, her victim. But I wasn't going to stay a victim. You don't teach children for 43 years without learning how to spot a lie. And you don't survive as a widow in this world without developing a backbone made of steel. Melissa might have taken my money, but she hadn't taken my brain. She hadn't taken my determination. And she sure as hell hadn't taken my ability to fight back. I went home and spread all my papers across the kitchen table. Bank statements, bills, the transfer documents I'd signed without reading carefully enough. I put on my reading glasses, the ones I used to grade papers with, and I read every single line of every single document. The truth was there in black and white, hidden in legal language and fine print. I hadn't just given Melissa access to my accounts. I had signed over complete control. She was authorized to make all financial decisions on my behalf. She could transfer money, close accounts, even sell my house if she wanted to. I had essentially signed away my financial autonomy, and I had done it willingly because I trusted her. Trust. What a joke. I taught my students that trust was something you earned and kept through consistent honesty. I taught them that trust was precious and fragile and should never be taken for granted. But I never taught them what to do when the person you trust most in the world uses that trust to destroy you. The worst part wasn't even the money, though God knows losing your life savings at 65 is terrifying enough. The worst part was the betrayal, the knowledge that my own child, the person I loved most in this world, had looked me in the eye and lied to me, had smiled while she robbed me, had used my grief and my loneliness and my desire to not be a burden as weapons against me. I sat at that kitchen table until the sun went down, reading and rereading those documents, letting the reality sink in. Melissa had stolen everything: my retirement savings, my checking account, even the small investment account Henry had left me. 65 years of working and saving and sacrificing, gone. But as I sat there in the dark, something else started to grow alongside the hurt and anger. Determination. I might be 65, I might be alone, and I might be broke, but I was not stupid. I was not helpless, and I was not going to let my daughter get away with this. The next morning, I called the Legal Aid Society. A young woman with a warm voice told me about their senior services program and scheduled me an appointment with a volunteer lawyer. His name was Samuel Cruz, and when I met him that Thursday afternoon, I knew immediately that he was someone I could trust. Not because he was family, God knows that didn't mean anything anymore, but because he listened to my story without judgment and looked at my documents with the same careful attention I used to give to my students' essays. "Mrs. Grant," he said after reviewing everything, "I'm not going to lie to you. This is a complex situation. Your daughter has legal authority to manage your finances, but the way she's used that authority could constitute financial abuse. We have options, but it's going to take time and evidence." Evidence. That word lit a fire in my chest. I had been collecting evidence for weeks in my grade book without even realizing it. Every phone call, every broken promise, every lie carefully documented in my teacher's handwriting. "I have evidence," I told him, pulling out the red leather book. "I've been keeping track of everything." Samuel's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. "Mrs. Grant, this is excellent documentation. This shows a clear pattern of deception and financial manipulation. With this, we might be able to prove that your daughter obtained access to your accounts through fraud." For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Not just hope for getting my money back, but hope for getting my dignity back. Hope for proving that I wasn't the confused, helpless old woman my daughter had convinced me I was. "What do we do next?" I asked. "We gather more evidence, bank records, account statements, documentation of where your money went, and then we confront her with the truth." Confronting Melissa with the truth. The thought both terrified and thrilled me. Part of me still wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding, that my daughter would have a reasonable explanation for why my life savings had disappeared while she'd been managing my finances. But I knew better. Teachers develop a sixth sense for when someone is trying to pull one over on them, and every instinct I had was screaming that Melissa had played me for a fool. Samuel worked quickly. Within a week, he had obtained records showing exactly where my money had gone. It wasn't scattered across various accounts or lost to poor investments. It had been transferred in large chunks to a single account, an account in Melissa's name only. And from there, it had been used for a down payment on a house, a beautiful, expensive house in the suburbs that my retirement savings had purchased for my daughter and her husband. I stared at the address on the bank records, memorizing it. My money had bought them granite countertops and hardwood floors while I sat in my cold house, wearing sweaters because I couldn't afford to turn up the heat. "There's more," Samuel said, his voice gentle but firm. "The house is titled only in your daughter's name. Her husband isn't on the deed at all. Even in her betrayal, Melissa had been smart. If her marriage fell apart, she would keep the house that my life's work had paid for. She had planned this carefully, methodically. This wasn't a moment of weakness or desperation. This was calculated theft. The rage that filled me then was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It was clean and pure and righteous. It burned away the last traces of doubt, the last whispers of, maybe there's an explanation. My daughter had stolen from me, lied to me, and left me to struggle with bills and shame while she enjoyed the luxury my sacrifices had provided. But I wasn't going to confront her in a lawyer's office or over the phone. If Melissa wanted to play games, if she wanted to pretend she was the caring daughter while she robbed me blind, then I was going to give her exactly what she wanted, right up until the moment I destroyed her. 2 weeks later, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Mom! Melissa's voice was bright and cheerful, as if she hadn't been avoiding my calls for months. David and I want to take you to dinner this weekend to celebrate our new house. We're so excited to show you pictures. Their new house, the house my retirement had paid for, the house that should have been my security in my old age. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart, I said, my voice steady despite the fury burning in my chest. I'd love to hear all about it. We met at Romano's, a family restaurant we'd been going to for years. The same restaurant where we'd celebrated Melissa's graduation, her engagement, her promotions at work. How fitting that it would also be where her lies finally caught up with her. Melissa and David were already seated when I arrived, and my daughter jumped up to hug me like we were the closest family in the world. She looked radiant, practically glowing with happiness and prosperity. My prosperity. Mom, you look wonderful, she said, though I knew I looked thin and tired. Stress and worry will do that to a person. I'm so glad you could make it. David stood to pull out my chair, ever the gentleman. I wondered if he knew where the money for their house had come from, or if Melissa had lied to him too. Looking at his face, open and genuinely happy to see me, I suspected he was as much a victim of her deception as I was. We have so much to tell you, Melissa said as we settled around the table. The house is even more beautiful than we hoped. David's been working on the garden, and we've already picked out furniture for the guest room. You'll have to come stay with us soon. The guest room, paid for with my money, in the house my life's work had purchased, where I would be a guest in what should have been my security. That sounds lovely, I said, reaching into my purse. Actually, I brought you something. A little housewarming gift. Melissa's eyes lit up. Mom, you didn't need to do that. Oh, but I did. I pulled out an envelope, cream-colored and thick, and placed it on the table between us. I thought you might find this interesting. Melissa reached for the envelope with curiosity, but something in my tone must have warned her. Her smile faltered slightly as she opened it and pulled out the papers inside. Bank statements, transfer records, property deeds, all the evidence Samuel and I had gathered, all the proof of what she'd done, laid out in black and white. The color drained from Melissa's face as she flipped through the pages. David leaned over to look, and I watched his expression change from confusion to shock to something that might have been disgust. Before we toast your new home, I said, my voice calm and level, I'd love to know whose name is really on the deed. Silence fell over our table like a heavy blanket. Around us, other families continued their conversations, laughing and enjoying their meals, oblivious to the drama unfolding at table 12. Mom, I can explain, Melissa started, but I held up my hand. Can you? Can you explain how you convinced me to sign over my financial autonomy by telling me you wanted to help? Can you explain how helping me turned into stealing my entire life savings? Can you explain how taking care of me meant leaving me unable to pay my electric bill while you bought granite countertops? My voice was getting louder, and I could see people at nearby tables starting to stare. Good. Let them stare. Let them see what financial abuse looks like. Let them see how family can destroy family. I was going to pay it back, Melissa whispered, her eyes filling with tears. We were just borrowing it temporarily. David got passed over for that promotion, and we needed the down payment for the house. And I thought, you thought what? That I wouldn't notice? That I was too old and stupid to realize what you'd done? David was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Melissa, you told me your mother gave us the money as a gift. You said she wanted to help us buy the house. The look of betrayal on his face almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. She did want to help, Melissa said desperately. She signed the papers willingly. I didn't force her to do anything. Because you lied to me. The words came out louder than I intended, sharp enough to cut through the restaurant's ambient noise. You told me you wanted to help manage my finances, not steal them. You told me I could trust you, not that you were planning to rob me blind. Melissa was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. I never meant for it to go this far. I was going to pay you back as soon as David got his next promotion. I just needed more time. Time? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. How much time do you think I have left, Melissa? I'm 65 years old. Those savings weren't just money. They were my security, my independence, my peace of mind in my final years. And you stole all of that from me for granite countertops and hardwood floors. David pushed his chair back from the table. I can't. I need some air. He looked at his wife like she was a stranger, which I suppose she was. Melissa, how could you do this? How could you steal from your own mother? It wasn't stealing, Melissa protested, but her voice was weak, defeated. It was, it was borrowing. I was going to pay it back. With what money? I asked. Your salary? Do you have any idea how long it would take you to pay back $63,000 on your income? Do you think I'm going to live long enough to see a penny of it returned? The number hung in the air like an accusation. $63,000. My entire life savings, accumulated over decades of teaching, of living modestly, of saving every penny I could for the retirement Henry and I had planned together. I may be old, I said, my voice steady now, controlled. But I didn't teach children for 40 years to forget how to read fine print. I know exactly what you did, how you did it, and why you did it. The only question now is what we're going to do about it. Melissa looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. What do you mean? I mean, you have two choices. You can transfer my money back to my account voluntarily, or I can take you to court and let a judge decide whether what you did constitutes financial abuse. Given the evidence I have, and trust me, I have plenty, I don't think you'll like how that turns out. The threat hung between us like a sword. Melissa knew I wasn't bluffing. She'd grown up watching me grade papers, watching me catch students in lies, watching me follow through on consequences when they tried to cheat or deceive. She knew I was thorough, methodical, and absolutely ruthless when it came to justice. You would really take me to court? Your own daughter? The pain in her voice almost broke my heart. Almost. You already took me to court, I said quietly. Every time you lied to me about helping with my finances, every time you promised to take care of things while you were stealing from me, Every time you let me worry about bills you could have paid with my own money, you were putting me on trial, judging whether I deserved honesty, whether I deserved respect, whether I deserved to be treated like a human being instead of a bank account with legs. David was still standing beside the table, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Melissa, you have to make this right. You have to give her money back. I can't just write a check for $63,000, Melissa snapped. It's tied up in the house. We'd have to sell or refinance or then sell, I said simply. Sell the house my retirement bought you and give me my money back. It's really that simple. But we just moved in. We love that house. David's already started working on the garden, and we've made plans. Plans? I stood up, my voice rising again. You want to talk about plans? I plan to retire with dignity. I plan to live independently in my own home for as long as possible. I plan to leave something to you when I died, not spend my final years as your dependent while you enjoyed the fruits of my labor. The restaurant was silent now, at least at the tables around us. I could feel dozens of eyes watching our family drama unfold. But I didn't care. Let them watch. Let them learn. Let them see what happens when trust is broken and family becomes predator. You stole my plans, Melissa. You stole my future. And now you're upset because getting my money back might inconvenience your present? I'm your daughter, she said desperately. I'm your only child. How can you threaten to destroy my marriage, my home, my whole life over money? Money? The word came out like a slap. You think this is about money? I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table, looking my daughter in the eye with all the intensity I used to reserve for the most difficult students. This is about trust. This is about respect. This is about the fact that you looked at your 65-year-old widowed mother and saw not a person who deserved honesty and care, but a resource to be exploited. This is about the fact that you used my grief and my loneliness and my love for you as weapons against me. My voice broke slightly on the last words, and I had to pause to collect myself. You didn't just steal my money, Melissa. You stole my faith in family. You stole my ability to trust the person I love most in this world. You made me doubt my own judgment, my own worth, my own sanity. And you did it all while smiling and telling me how much you loved me. Melissa was sobbing now, her shoulders shaking with the force of her tears. I do love you, Mom. I never wanted to hurt you. We needed the money, and I thought I could pay it back before you noticed, and it just got more and more complicated. You thought I wouldn't notice that my life savings had disappeared? You thought I was that far gone? No, I thought I could handle it. I thought I could make it right. By lying to me for months? By letting me worry about bills while you redecorated your kitchen? By making me feel like a confused old woman who couldn't manage her own finances? David finally sat back down, his face pale. Melissa, you told me your mother was starting to show signs of dementia. You said that's why she needed help managing her money. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Dementia. She had told people I was losing my mind to justify stealing from me. Is that what you've been telling people? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. That I'm mentally incompetent? That I can't take care of myself? Melissa couldn't meet my eyes. I had to explain why I was handling your finances. People would have asked questions if they thought you were still capable of. Capable of what? Of noticing that you were robbing me? Of having enough brain cells left to read a bank statement? The rage that filled me then was clean and pure and devastating. It burned away any remaining sympathy I might have felt for my daughter, any lingering hope that this could be resolved with apologies and family forgiveness. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, get out. Both of you. Get out of this restaurant. Get out of my sight, and don't contact me again until you're ready to return every penny you stole. Please, Mom, we can work this out. We can figure out a payment plan or a payment plan? I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut glass. You want me to finance my own theft? You want me to wait patiently while you pay back my retirement in monthly installments, assuming I live long enough to see the end of it? I gathered my purse and stood to leave. You have 1 week to decide. Transfer my money back or face me in court. Those are your only options. And if we can't come up with the money that quickly, I looked down at my daughter, this woman I had raised and loved and trusted, this stranger who had stolen my future while pretending to care about my welfare. Then you'll learn what it feels like to lose everything you thought was secure, just like you taught me. I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, leaving behind the sound of my daughter's tears and my son-in-law's shocked silence. The other diners watched me go, and I could see the mixture of sympathy and respect in their eyes. They had witnessed something raw and real, the moment when a victim stops being a victim and starts fighting back. The next few days passed in a blur of legal preparations and cold determination. Samuel filed the necessary paperwork while I gathered more evidence, documenting every lie, every broken promise, every moment when Melissa had chosen deception over honesty. The most devastating piece of evidence came from David himself. He called me 3 days after the restaurant confrontation, his voice shaky and defeated. Mrs. Grant, I need you to know that I had no idea what Melissa had done. She told me you had given us the money willingly, that you wanted to help us buy our first house. If I had known the truth, I believe you, David. You're a victim in this too. I've been going through our financial records, and I found something you need to know. The money transfer, it happened 2 days after your husband's funeral. Melissa accessed your account while you were still grieving, 2 days after Henry's funeral, while I was barely functional with grief, while I was struggling to accept that my partner of 42 years was gone forever. My daughter was stealing my future. The timeline made everything worse. It meant this wasn't a moment of desperation or a sudden financial crisis. It meant Melissa had looked at her grieving, vulnerable mother and seen an opportunity. She's been planning to leave me, David continued, his voice barely above a whisper. I found divorce papers in her desk. She was going to take the house and leave me with nothing, just like she did to you. So there it was, the final piece of the puzzle. Melissa hadn't just stolen from me. She had planned to steal from her husband, too. She had used my money to buy a house she intended to keep for herself, had put David's name on the mortgage, but not the deed, had set up her exit strategy while pretending to build a life together. My daughter wasn't just a thief. She was a predator. The week deadline came and went without a word from Melissa. No calls, no texts, no desperate attempts at reconciliation. Just silence, as if she thought I would give up, as if she thought I would accept my fate as her victim and fade quietly into poverty and dependence. She had always underestimated me. Even as a child, she had tried to see how much she could get away with, testing boundaries and pushing limits. But she had never learned the most important lesson I tried to teach all my students. Actions have consequences. Samuel filed the lawsuit on a Monday morning. Within hours, Melissa was calling, her voice panicked and shrill. Mom, you can't do this. You can't take me to court. I'm your daughter. Being my daughter didn't stop you from stealing from me, I replied calmly. Why should it stop me from seeking justice? But David left me. He filed for divorce and moved out. I can't afford the house payments on my own. The irony was almost laughable. Melissa had stolen my security, and now she was losing her own. She had destroyed her marriage through her lies and betrayal, and now she was facing the consequences of her choices. That sounds like a personal problem, I said, using the same tone I once used with students who complained about failing grades they'd earned through their own poor choices. I'll lose everything: the house, my credit, my reputation. Now you know how I felt when you stole my life savings. Please, Mom, I'll pay you back. I'll sell the house and give you every penny. Just drop the lawsuit. Please. But it was too late for pleas. It was too late for apologies and promises and tearful reconciliations. Melissa had made her choice when she decided to steal from her grieving mother. Now she would live with the consequences. The legal process moved surprisingly quickly. With the evidence Samuel and I had gathered, and with David's testimony about how he'd been deceived as well, Melissa's lawyer advised her to settle rather than face trial. The settlement gave me back my full retirement savings, plus interest and legal fees. It also included a lien against the house, ensuring that if Melissa tried to hide assets or declare bankruptcy, I would still be paid. But the money, while important, wasn't the real victory. The real victory was the public record of what had happened, the legal acknowledgement that my daughter had committed financial abuse against her elderly mother. It meant that her name would forever be associated with elder abuse, that any future employer or romantic partner who cared to look would know exactly what kind of person she was. Some people might call that revenge. I call it justice. 6 months after getting my money back, I did something Melissa never expected. I took half of the recovered funds and donated them to a literacy program for elderly women, funding classes that would teach women my age how to read financial documents, how to spot fraud, how to protect themselves from predators, even when those predators were their own children. The program was called the Evelyn Grant Foundation for Financial Literacy, and it gave me more satisfaction than keeping every penny of my stolen retirement ever could have. Melissa had used my trust to steal from me, so I used her theft to help other women protect themselves. I kept the other half of the money for myself, of course. I wasn't stupid enough to give away my security twice, but knowing that my suffering had been transformed into protection for others, that my daughter's betrayal had become a shield for women who might otherwise face the same violation, that made everything worth it. The foundation grew quickly, funded by donations from other families who had experienced financial abuse and by volunteers who understood that elder fraud was an epidemic hiding in plain sight. We taught women how to read contracts, how to maintain control of their finances, how to recognize the warning signs of manipulation. Most importantly, we taught them that being old didn't mean being helpless, that needing help didn't mean surrendering control, and that family relationships built on lies and exploitation weren't worth preserving. 8 months after the settlement, on a cold February evening, Melissa came to my house. I saw her through the window, standing on my front porch with her shoulders hunched against the wind, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered. I almost didn't answer the door. I had nothing left to say to her, no forgiveness left to offer. But curiosity won, and I opened the door just enough to see her face. She looked terrible, thin and pale, with dark circles under her eyes, and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from months of stress and consequences. She had lost weight, lost her confident posture, lost the bright smile that had once lit up every room she entered. "Hi, Mom," she said quietly. Melissa. We stood there in silence for a moment, the cold air rushing between us like all the words we'd never be able to take back. I know you probably don't want to see me, she said finally. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to come here and tell you that you were right. About everything. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't close the door either. I lost the house, she continued. I couldn't afford the payments after David left, and the bank foreclosed. I'm living in a studio apartment now, working 2 jobs just to pay rent. She paused, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. I know this doesn't change anything. I know saying I'm sorry doesn't give you back the months of worry and fear and humiliation I put you through. But I needed you to know that I understand now what I did to you. I understand what it feels like to lose everything you thought was secure. The wind picked up, and I could see her shivering in her thin coat. Once upon a time, I would have invited her in, made her tea, worried about her warmth and safety. But that woman was gone, killed by betrayal, and resurrected as someone harder, someone who had learned that love without boundaries was just another word for victimhood. I'm glad you understand, I said finally. Understanding is the first step toward becoming a better person. Do you think? She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible over the wind. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? I looked at this woman who had once been my baby girl, my pride and joy, my hope for the future. I looked at the stranger she had become, the thief who had stolen my trust and security and peace of mind. I don't hate you, I said finally, but forgiveness? Forgiveness isn't something you can ask for like a favor. It's something that happens when the person who was wronged is ready to let go of their anger. And I'm not ready. I may never be ready. Melissa nodded, tears freezing on her cheeks in the February cold. I understand. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, that I know what I did was unforgivable, that I wish I could take it all back. Wishing doesn't change anything, I said, echoing words I'd spoken to countless students over the years. Actions change things. The only thing you can do now is make sure you never hurt anyone else the way you hurt me. I won't, she said quickly. I swear I won't. See that you don't. I started to close the door, then paused. Melissa? Yes? The money you stole from me is being used to help other women protect themselves from financial abuse. In a way, your theft is preventing other thefts. Your betrayal is helping other people avoid being betrayed. I thought you should know that something good came from all the pain you caused. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the weight of that knowledge settling on her shoulders. That's, that's good, Mom. I'm glad something positive came from what I did. Goodbye, Melissa. Goodbye, Mom. I closed the door and locked it, then stood in my entryway, listening to the sound of her footsteps walking away. When I was sure she was gone, I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea, the same ritual I'd been performing for months whenever the grief and anger threatened to overwhelm me. But this time, the tea tasted different, less bitter, not sweet. I didn't think it would ever be sweet again, but less bitter. The conversation with Melissa hadn't healed anything, hadn't restored trust or rebuilt relationship, but it had given me something I hadn't realized I needed: acknowledgement. She had admitted what she'd done. She had acknowledged the harm she'd caused. She had faced the consequences of her actions without making excuses or asking for sympathy. It wasn't redemption, but it was responsibility. And maybe, for now, that was enough. I'm still alone in this house, still managing my own finances, still carrying the scars of my daughter's betrayal. I don't trust as easily as I once did. I read every document carefully, maintain control of my own accounts, and never sign anything without understanding exactly what it means. Some people might say that's sad, that my daughter's theft stole my innocence as well as my money. But I don't see it that way. I see it as wisdom hard earned. I see it as strength forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered by the choice to fight back. I survived. I fought back. I won. And every week I get letters from women who've attended the financial literacy classes funded by my foundation. Women who spotted the warning signs of fraud because of what we taught them. Women who maintain control of their finances because they learned from my experience. Women who protected themselves from predators because I refused to stay a victim. Those letters are worth more than all the apologies my daughter could ever offer. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, if you've ever had your trust used as a weapon against you, if you've ever felt the particular pain of being victimized by family, remember this: silence might heal the wound, but speaking the truth sets you free. Don't let shame keep you quiet. Don't let love make you an enabler. Don't let the fear of losing relationship prevent you from demanding respect. You deserve honesty. You deserve dignity. You deserve to be treated as a human being worthy of respect, not a resource to be exploited. And if the people who claim to love you can't offer those basic courtesies, then they don't deserve access to your life, your money, or your trust. I learned that lesson at 65, but it's never too late to learn it. It's never too late to fight back. It's never too late to reclaim your power and your voice and your right to be treated with basic human decency. My name is Evelyn Grant. I was a victim of financial abuse by my own daughter, but I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor. And I'm here to tell you that survival is possible, justice is achievable, and your voice matters more than you know. Don't let anyone steal that from you. Not even family. Especially not family, because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself, and you owe it to yourself to demand better. You owe it to yourself to fight back.